this started because we used to do things on New Year's Day. We just felt like on New Year's Day, there was always this portal that kind of opens where people are really willing to like think about things differently and are able to open up to new possibility and are kind of searching for it, right? We're not trying to sell it at that point. People are hunting for it. So what can we do to kind of open thinking and portal? And so we did it on New Year's Day, and it was really, really lovely. And Roshi attended, and Tania performed, and my team, Emma and Mita, we were all there, and it was great. But the recording didn't happen. There was a glitch in the recording. And there were a lot of people who wanted the recording and wanted to have a sort of a sense of this and touch into it. So we're debating about what to do and how to redo it. And we decided that we would do an encore of the January 1st one and do it on the first. And then we were like, well, you know what? This year is going to be a really dynamic, kind of a doozy of a year for sure. I saw a comedian that said that, we have the same candidates up for presidential election. We've got the same two teams that are doing the Super Bowl. And someone laughed. It's like, of all the years that you could redo, 2020 may not have been the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we are wandering into this sort of like reverb chamber around this meant that maybe that we should do this more frequently. So we have committed at this point to doing it on the first of every month, regardless of whether or not that falls on a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday or whatever. We're just going to do it on the first. We were trying to figure out the right time because we had a lot of folks from Europe when we did this on New Year's Day in the morning. We do not have folks from Europe today because it's just the middle of the night, but we might have people from Asia. So we might switch things around, but at this point we're committed to doing it at this time. And really what we're striving for is being prepared. Like we really are thinking about how we want to use this time because we really recognize what a privilege it is to have people's attention and time, but not to be so precious about it that it all has to be super perfect, that we make ourselves crazy, and that there's room for this kind of conversation and for people to connect in more authentic ways. And I think the shape of this will probably change if we end up doing this 12 times. I'm sure we're going to learn a whole lot more about how to do this more and more effectively or rhythmically, depending on where we are in the year, right? Each month presents itself something unique and different. We're in February as we head into a check-in on where we've been on the first month of the year with Valentine's and thinking about love and how much we care and appreciate each other. Oops, somebody say something. And so these will be themed as we go through the year generally, but they really are under the umbrella of this idea of the new story. And it came from this idea that we were feeling really heavy at the end of last year as people were talking about how much there is to worry about and how many things are breaking down and how many things feel like they're not secure anymore. And they feel like the old story isn't holding them well. And it is really easy to get very immersed in that. And I spent a bit of my time, about probably, I don't know if too immersed, but worried that I was spending more time there than I was on the other, and realized through some of the personal growth work that I had done and people I'm very privileged to spend time with, that actually really, there's a whole new story being birthed. And that's a very, very fun and amazing place to be in when we get to actually pay attention to that and can see the little shoots that are growing up in this amazing, human forest of which we are all a part. And wouldn't it feel good at least one freaking day a month to spend time thinking about the news story and really focusing our attention and calling that into our awareness more thoughtfully. So with that, I invite you all to February 1st. And if you're in Asia, February 2nd morning. Hope it's going well already in February. And I'm super thrilled to be doing this again. Now, Roshi was an attendee last time, our host's son, and this is an interesting thing, right? My host on January 1st ended up with a pretty dramatic personal tragedy in her life, just 5 or 6 days later after our event. So, life is fleeting, man. You never know how it's all going to go down. But we send her lots of love, and she's with us in spirit. And Roshi gets to jump in and be my co-host and co-facilitator. And Roshi will maybe talk a little bit more about how we've met, but I see her as this very, multidimensional woman who is all about holding space for people in very different dimensions, whether that is as a facilitator or as a filmmaker or as a problem solver in all kinds of interesting ways. But Rosh, do you want to tell us more about
Sure.
you?
Thank you. It's so good to be here. And it was nice I barely scraped into joining the last session, and I'm so glad I did. I just had a feeling it would be inspiring. I loved, and I'm going to get to how we met, Nancy, but I loved what you were talking about with the spirit of encore. And usually the encore happens at the very end. So one might imagine it would happen at the end of 2024. But how cool that you're doing an encore at the beginning of the year. Like that's the best part. So I love that everything's reconfiguring and it feels really good.
Well,
So
can I just say something? And this goes back to, if we hadn't misrecorded it, I'm sure we would have done a one and done. right? And this goes back to opportunity. When things don't go quite the way we wanted, what does that mean in terms of questioning how it is we do and what it is that we do? And I feel like it really, it was cool that it opened up the space to why not do this over and over again.
I mean, I may not have been here as a co-host, so I'm excited.
Anytime, baby, anytime.
Yeah, Nancy and I met through Hatch, which is a nonprofit global network. I've recognized a few people from the Hatch network here. And the time we really connected was in Mexico, and it was more of a reunion summit. So it was a bit more relaxed. And after that, Nancy reached out and said, we're doing this summit we're going to run something for it was like Global Business Futures Institute in Canada. So go from sitting, poolside in the heat, talking about global challenges to running something together in freezing cold Canada, but that's just what makes everything fun, and getting to know Emma and Samita has been really awesome too. So we thought it would be really nice, it takes a moment for us to put aside whatever we're thinking about to get into this space, to listen to a piece by an artist named Stan Walker called I Am. And this piece is the official soundtrack for Ava DuVernay's latest film, Origin. I don't know if you've seen it. I was able to see that recently. So without giving too much more, let's listen to the first part of it and just enjoy. I want to draw our attention to the chorus of what Stan Walker said, which I think is pretty astounding. He says, as far as the eye can see, everything is change. Tell me how we can stand by. I don't want to be the same. So with that, take a moment, like 30 seconds, to think about something you want to learn. And it could be something big or concrete, like a language, or maybe it's something you want to learn more about, like your local representatives and like government representatives, or a bit more about some like cryptocurrency. It could be anything. But in this moment where we don't want to remain static, which is an assumption for the people that might be attracted to Nancy, what is one thing you'd like to change and learn more about? And type that in the chat.
Yeah, and I think it can also be very internal, right? As we did this practice round, mine is much more of an internal learning right now. And welcome to all those of us who've joined. It's so funny that this is like a cross-section of Nancy's life that we're seeing here, which is really awesome. Hey, Jennifer, it's so good to see you. And Gail. I'm trying to find the chat.
Robotics to become more fully embodied and knowing myself as the creator incarnate. Wow.
Well, I was gonna say, it's a small enough group. If some people want to say some of these things out loud, can we just do that for a minute, Roche?
Yeah.
This is why we love Leora.
Yeah. Would anyone like to speak to theirs? I don't know. This is good because I don't know people like Nancy does. So Tasha, would you like to share what you would like to learn?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'd like to be less reactive to the worlds around me and the impulses coming at me or that I have inside. Yeah.
Amazing. Laura and Jennifer, I think the three of us need to huddle because we had a common theme. But Laura, do you want to speak more about what it is you want to learn?
I just want to make sure, are you saying Leora or Laura? I don't know if there's a Laura.
Oh, sorry, Lori. It was moving when I was.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No,
Lori?
so
maybe Lori is.
We're putting people on the spot. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's good.
We'll probably have to empty the dishwasher at the same time, which is totally cool.
Why don't we take Leora, if you would like to share it, let's do that and then move on to there's so much that we have in store. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, I am very, and again, dealing with a concussion, so not all inspiring as per normal. So I'll do the best that I can. But I'm just very clear that part of this shift that we're moving through is, for me, I'll say, although I believe that there is a level of the collective that's also moving through it in a similar fashion, is that it's less about the external shifting and more about the internal shift that then reflects in the external. So for me, it's really about becoming more and more embodied as the creator that I am, and what that looks like, because I know it's very esoteric, but what that looks like is this completion of these themes that have played out not only in my life, but in my past lives, in ancestrally speaking, and then in the broader collective, such that I am able to be free, like truly exercise my free will and my sovereignty, like truly. So for me, what that means is that there's nothing operating in the background. There's no programs running. There's no patterns running, but that I'm actually consciously creating in each now moment. So that
I'd
makes
be
sense.
impressed to hear what you sound like when you don't have a concussion. That was amazing. Oh my God. Nancy, back to you.
Well, and I think it's a nice segue again, because if you go back to Sam Walker's song, right? He saw the beginning of Ava's movie, didn't get to see the whole thing, and saw I think about 20 minutes of it, and then suddenly wrote this song because he really felt this call. And I think that one of the early lines is, "I inherit you, and you inherit me." And so I think that that's really part of this thing that's so extraordinary, right? It's less about the stories that it is about recognizing that we're really much more deeply connected across time and space with one another. So, and interestingly, my thing I'm looking on this year is boundaries, and really understanding which ones I'm softening and which ones I'm strengthening, because I think that there's a lot coming in and out of our internal and external worlds. So with that, we're going to play a couple of clips of people who we are really inspired by and the work that they're doing that we think is really profound in ushering in this new story. So the first we're going to show you, I think it's a 5 or 6 minute clip of a longer talk that Sage Lanier did at a big web summit last year. If you guys are not familiar with Sage, she's 25 years old now. She really began her more public work, I think, when she was about 18 or 19. She's a student at UC Berkeley. And she was really worried about her peer group and their concerns around the environment and climate. There's just a headline someone sent me today again about how much doom youth feel. They really deserve to hear a much better story, straight up. 54% of students, and again, I'm sure whatever that number is, but feel a sense of tremendous doom. And so Sage is trying to correct for that. And so she started a course there about how to teach her peers, again, to be more climate active, to really sort of process their emotions and get more engaged. And it's now been taught to 1,800 students. She's taught, I think, 600 personally, and then it's been now branched out within Berkeley. And so, you're never too young to start this work. And I think the call that she has to business and the invitation she has to them quite sternly is profound for us to hear. So I'm very grateful for people who are stepping into this space with such clarity. So with that, we'll go to Sage.
As much as I'd love to stand here and talk to you about the power of youth, offer you a message of hope, the reality is my generation does not have institutional power yet. And the world is going to run out of our carbon budget long before we are anywhere near old enough to change things. So I'd say it's actually up to you. The world's major corporations, oil companies, and fashion and tech are designing a future. And right now, that future includes mass suffering for humans and other species. We cannot transition to renewable energy fast enough to avoid complete climate breakdown. No amount of innovation can change that fact. We actually have to use less energy. And even if we could flip a switch today, and all of the world was powered by clean energy, we'd still be cutting down too many trees, polluting our air and water, and pulling too many resources from the earth. And the reason for that is fossil fuels are not the root cause of the ecological crisis. The economy is. But we have already cut down 30% of the world's forests. We're already at 1.3 degrees of warming. We've already pulled 88% of the fish out of the ocean. We are running a linear system of extracting resources from the earth, turning them into goods, shipping those goods all around the world, and then landfilling them and starting that process all over again on a planet with a finite amount of resources. Let's take a look at some statistics on carbon emissions. Is it possible to sustainably source materials for the 80 billion garments the fashion industry produces each year and do it all powered by clean energy? No. You want to hear from the next generation what we expect from you in terms of radical climate action. And I'm telling you now, it's not just solar panels and wind turbines. Radical climate action means shrinking unsustainable industries. We now have enough clothes to clothe the next 6 generations. So what is a completely non-essential industry doing, contributing up to 10% of all emissions? But radical climate action can also mean growing other industries. If wasted food accounts for 8% of all emissions, there's a huge business opportunity for development of industrial composting infrastructure and innovation in the food system. In order for us to have a livable future, we need you to work with us on designing a more sustainable and just future. What we expect from you moving forward is a transition towards a circular economy. The circular economy is 2 things. 1, an economy based on services, not goods. And 2, an economy where resources cycle. Thus far, the conversation around solving climate change has been focused on a transition to renewable energy. And we do need that, expeditiously. But the Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates that renewables can only address 55% of the necessary reductions we need in order to avoid complete catastrophe. So, like I said, to tackle the rest, we are going to need to use less energy, which requires a different economy. Between 4 and 7% of emissions come from mining. The obvious radical climate solution we have is to increase metal recycling to 100% and stop mining. Mine the landfills if you need to. In a circular system, profit can only be pursued by using waste as a resource. If all we can do is less bad, then we are still failing. We must pursue a future where ecological restoration is not just an afterthought to offset our bad behavior, but where it is integral to the economy itself. And we already have all the solutions we need. We're just asking you to implement them. Our survival depends on it. I'm working on making sure that the next generation has the education we need in order to survive in a climate-changed world. You're the only ones who can guarantee us more than just survival. I don't have institutional power yet. So right now, the most powerful thing I can do is to come to you with this message. I'm holding up my end of the bargain. I know you have your marching orders. It's up to you.
The part of that, Emma, I mean, she's amazing, right? And she's just, I mean, she's right on. And then really, it's not just about a climate or a tech solution. It really is an economic shift, a giant one that we need to think through as we move forward. But one of the things that Emma and I loved about this video is not only is she so powerful in her stance and wears exactly what she wants to, it doesn't worry about her slides being super gorgeous, but then she gets this massive standing ovation at the end. And she's just like, peace out. She's like, not, you know, for the accolade. She's there for the work.
Yeah, I was really struck by how, you know, towards the end, she said the education she and her generation ought to focus on is about survival, which is such a different mindset.
Really, and the fact that they have to think that way, right? I was in a Renewable Futures gathering last weekend, and there was a woman here who was a psychoanalyst, but also is working on extreme climate futures and really helping people navigate their emotions through this space. And not just being so blissful out that you just think it's somebody else's problem, but also not be so, again, torn into the doom and sadness of it. So there's a lot of conversations that will be happening. I've been talking about the fact that it's not just AI that we need to really be thinking about, it's climate trauma that we need to be addressing as we head into this year. But that is, what I love again is that there's a hopeful story, right? There's a way out if we can just get ourselves to rethink how we do things. So with that, we will then now turn to another person who we think is extraordinary. At one point, actually, Mary Lou Jepsen was going to join us tonight. I had sent her an invitation and she said she was coming without knowing that we were going to feature her. But she may not have been able to make it this evening. But Mary Lou Jepsen is a woman whose work I've been following for many, many years. She's an extraordinary technologist. I forgot how many patents she has to her name, but a long, long list of them. She's worked for every big tech company. She's been behind many of the innovations around goggles and wearables and that kind of thing. And she was also the technology mind behind One Laptop Per Child, when that initiative happened a few years ago with Nicholas Negroponte and others. And 7 years ago, she decided that she wanted to leave the corporate world again and take another risk on starting another company. Partly she'd had her own brain tumor and she'd gotten through that. And she saw the power of the MRI and she wanted to try to figure out how to turn MRI into basically a personal electronic. Like, how could this be something that would be much more accessible to people and be certainly accessible around the world? I was working a lot on that. So we're going to show you a little excerpt that we've done about a longer talk that Emma will put in the link. It's definitely worth watching. I've probably watched it 5 times now and shared it with so many people because it's just giant breakthrough in what is possible in not just brain health. She's tackling brain health, but we'll talk in a moment what she then announced afterwards with this initiative. But I'm thrilled to introduce you to the work of Mary Lou Jepson.
I decided that we could use light and sound instead of radiation, gamma rays, 2-ton magnetic fields, holes in our skull with needles digging down into our neurons. Light penetrates your body. If you cup your hands around a candle, you can feel the heat. That's infrared light. It penetrates us. So does sound. If a drummer stands next to you, you can feel that sound in your gut. They're cheaper and safer than radiation. And we hit a discontinuity in Moore's law, the steady march of transistor density doubling. A pole vault leap happened a few years ago as we reached pixel sizes that are the size of the wavelength of light that are in every single one of your smartphones and cost $1. We can also print little drums on silicon that can emit exactly the same wavelength, and you can delay one wavelength from one drum to the next drum and create all kinds of different physics. Well, the physics has been around, but not in silicon. This is new. So Open Water, my company, we're working on using the same unit, the same visor, to cure cancer, stroke, and mental disease, just with different software layers. And you know, it's 6 years later, and we've gotten pretty far. We've got some stunning results in preclinical, where we're 5 times more effective than chemotherapy. 5 times using light and sound. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how this works. On those camera chips you have, those $1 camera chips in your smartphone, if you get rid of the lens and use a laser, you can interfere light and see the interference, and it looks like waves on the ocean. And we can read those waves like a sailor can read the waves to know where the fish are or where the land is. We use math. We can also craft the shape of sound waves into our body, and using an array of these drums where we delay the wavelength slightly, we delay the phase of the wavelength, we can focus those waves near and far, right and left, up and down, to reach anywhere we wish to in the body or brain. It's akin to an opera singer being able to break a wine glass, but nothing else in the room is harmed. We use a harmonic resonant frequency, very low frequency, very low intensity. So we do this, we blast a bunch of this low frequency, low intensity harmonic sound into the brain, and the cancer cells, they can't take it. They compress and expand until they burst, releasing proteins that then vaccinate the brain against that very cancer. This could be scaled out to all aggressive cancers that have similar mechanical properties. We're working on that. We're doing this, you can do this with a cheap little chip of those little drums on silicon. So we've tried it. We built up with our partners at Terasaki hundreds of human brain organoids and gave them human glioblastoma. And we killed the glioblastoma cells in 1 minute, 97% of them, 5x better than chemo, and the healthy cells are unharmed. But that's not our first product. Our first product has been in human trials now for over a year, and we expect FDA approval next year. But where we really excel is we're 200 times better at measuring blood flow. So I thought, okay, maybe we should make a subset of this, blood flow, into our first product. Where is there a large, urgent, unmet need to measure blood flow? Well, stroke is the #2 killer in the world, and that's a blood flow issue. Why do so many people die of it? Why does it disable so many? #1, cost of long-term disability. I mean, we know how to deal with clots. We know how to fix bleeds. The issue is it's not apparent what this person has. It's a time to diagnosis crisis. We're scaling up those trials. We're finding, we think, new biomarkers as we get more data, because nobody's ever measured blood flow like this before. So we expect, as we get through those trials, to have an FDA approval next year. And there's one other project I want to talk to you about. Changing that harmonic frequency that we use to burst apart the glioblastoma cells, we can also read and write neurons anywhere in the brain. And that's important for something like mental disease. Sure, a lot of things cause mental disease, your parents, your relationships, your jobs, whatever. The result is neurons are either overfiring or not firing enough, and we can see it on MRI, like if you look at the before treatment picture of an MR of one of our patients. And so what we do is we focus sound to that precise location, again, super low intensity, tuned to change the calcium channels and suppress the firing of those neurons. So we do that, we see an objective result of the quelling of those neurons on the MRI, but the patient after the treatment feels high and elated and scores lower on depression scores. We're about to start a whole, like next week, a whole group of treatment-resistant, clinically depressed patients. We're doing this with the University of Arizona. That can also scale out to substance abuse, different forms of mental disease, and at different frequencies, we can grow neurons and synapses, which should be important in neurological disease. So this leads, we can scan the brain anywhere we want and write maybe a mood or an image or a thought. So question, you know, Elon Musk, literally, this is a picture from Neuralink. They want to drill a 1-inch hole in your skull and sort of plumb down these wires through your brain that, you know, kill neurons on the way down. Do you want that or the non-invasive solution? We might be revolutionizing neurotherapeutics and diagnostics and scaling that out to the body for aggressive cancers like pancreatic and so forth. But it was really taking a leap of faith, a large loss of prestige, a big loss of money, to start another company and try. And there's been many hard days, but I wanted to encourage you all to do it because we get to live now. You're here because you want to change things, and I just want to urge you to take the leap.
What do you guys think? Like, I can go on and on about how much I think she's amazing, but how does that make you feel?
Well,
Excited.
this is, oh, so sorry. Go ahead.
I just said excited. Yeah.
Optimistic.
I was just going to say that it's so aligned with what you know, one of the key components in this great change, in the shift that we're in right now, is light. And so it's very exciting for me to see someone in that realm speaking about this to the masses, because it's, you know, I think up until now, perhaps it's kind of lived in the woo-woo land of like solfeggio harmonics and the healing principles of these different frequencies. So that's very exciting to me.
I love the connection across that. I didn't really think about it that way, but I think that is, and I think again, you know, it's really fascinating that we're playing this now in the week that Elon Musk did just insert the first, you know, Neuralink into someone's brain. And Emma and I had a conversation about it. Should it be one or the other? And I think there probably be space in the world for someone who's got a very significant issue. And this could potentially, you know, Elon's think it help, but the fact that that's not considered a mass solution and that she's really trying to solve a completely different problem. And the part that I think is also fascinating is that she's been now trying to figure out how to scale this out as quickly as possible, not by owning it, but by sharing it. So she announced, this was a talk she gave in June. She alluded to this in December when I got to hear her speak in Dubai. And then a few weeks ago, she announced that they're open sourcing all of it. So like open source, open patent, and open researched way of doing this. And she had to send out a thing that it was like open as in free speech, not as in free beer. So she still has a business model behind this. But the fact is she's not here trying to do this so she can make as much money as she possibly can around every single thing. She's really trying to figure out how to scale this up. And so what's fascinating is because she's making it, so again, an open research platform, a group with as few as 20 patients could do their own clinical trial, and it would get then included into a bigger body of research work, and then that would be able to get to FDA approval or whatever it needs much faster. So the fact that she's really thinking through this all these different ways in the most generous and most extraordinary and most fascinating ways is just, for me, again, we start to imagine what does it look like to be, you know, a leader or someone who is ushering in the future. Like, I want to put all my bets on Mary Lou Jepsen. right? I
Yeah.
want that way of thinking. That's the story that we tell about what's possible with innovation and with how capitalism and, innovation can coexist for a greater good for all.
Yeah, it was interesting how at the end she did say, like take a leap. Even in, she talked about loss of money, loss of recognition or prestige in order to do the right thing or, to try new ways to change situations. So hopefully
Right.
that circumstance will change, but it's a good prompt.
Right, exactly. All right, with that, we are now turning it over to you, Miss Tania, an extraordinary musician that also Roshi and I have had an opportunity to meet. That magic trip that I took to Mexico, not only did I get to meet Roshi and Natalie and some of the other people that are on the session, but I got to hear Tania perform, and I've gotten to hear her many times, and on New Year's Day, she blows away. So Tania, I will let you introduce yourself. You're in New Orleans right now, but you come from Jackson, Mississippi, and you're passionate about everything.
Yes, thank you for the intro. Hi, everybody. My name is Tania. I'm coming to you live from New Orleans. I'm a Mississippi gal, so I'm a Southerner through and through. And I'm excited to be here. My gift is music, and the song I'm going to play for you all is called Boxes. It's a song I wrote about all of us being in our little boxes and not stepping out of those. And when you do, what do you want to create? That's where the real creation starts. So I've got a Malcolm Gladwell quote here that says, if everyone has to think outside of the box, maybe it is the box that needs to be fixed. We live in boxes. They keep us safe. We talk in boxes. They make us late to the party. We create conflict just to feel alive. We create comfort and hope we don't die. Tell me what you wanna do and there's a life. Tell me what you wanna say and there's a life is yours. It's yours. Tell me what you wanna do and there's a life. Tell me what you wanna say and there's a life is yours. It's yours. No, we don't dream enough. We wait for someone to fix our problems. No, we don't think enough. We wait for someone to tell us what to do with our lives. We don't love enough. We wait for someone to love us first. No, we don't reach enough to help each other out. Tell me what you wanna do and there's a life. Tell me what you wanna say and there's a life is yours. It's yours. Tell me what you wanna do and there's a life. Tell me what you wanna say and there's a life is yours. It's yours. It's yours. It's yours. Yours. It's yours. Yours. It's yours. Yours. It's yours. Thank you. Thank you.
I never know the etiquette on Zoom. Like, do we keep our mics on or not? But I want you to hear us all. I know, right. We all do
Jazz
that.
hands. Jazz hands.
Yeah.
work.
Thank you so much, Nia. Do you want to speak for 2 seconds about your Black Opera project?
Yes,
I think
I'm
we'll
working.
see what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm working on a bunch of different records, 2 records right now, but one is a Black rock opera. It features international collaborations. One is a group out of Tanzania where we fuse gospel and Afrofusion. It's in Swahili and English, so we're using both languages to merge. And the next part of the project for the rock opera is with the Mississippi Symphony Orchestra, where we're fusing classical music, hip hop, and also soul. So that's my major project that I'm working on now, and I'm fundraising for it at the moment.
Yeah, so I think Emma will put the link in there as well, but I think anything we can do to spread the word on Tania's project and help her raise both funds and the awareness of it. When do you think want it to come out? When would we all get to hear?
Probably late 2025.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you again so much. So at the very end, we'll close out with a recorded version of a Tania song, just so we can feel really, really on a high. But thank you, babe, for being here and for joining us and for contributing in such a lovely way.
Yeah.
Oops, Roche,
Go
yeah.
ahead. No,
No.
you go. I was just thinking about the theme of Tania's song around what it means to be out of, like in a box or out of the box. And I know it's a metaphor, but it's interesting to think about, like, if we each were going to step out of the box that we find ourselves in today, whatever that might look like, what would we want to do, or what's the stretch? So if you all are willing, I'm going to put it in the chat, but if we're willing, take a few seconds to think about what you would do to just mix it up or extend beyond what is perhaps more familiar. And what would you want to do a bit more of?
The tough thing to put in like a text line.
I know, right?
As you start to
We can
imagine
talk about it.
I was gonna say, so if somebody wants to share theirs verbally, because I think it would take me forever to write mine in a succinct way. Jennifer? Did you have your hand up, or did you? We're gonna make people out of the box right here.
We all want to stay in our boxes. I think that's how I'm interpreting it.
No, I think I don't really like the provocation about if we all have to step out of our boxes, what's the problem is the box, right? And so I think that is really the profound invitation you gave us, Tania, is to really think about it. I talk a lot about that. We think that we need that something's wrong with us when often it's the system that was not designed for us or for us to show up in this way. And so
yeah, and if we initiate some change, then that can start to change too. Like putting things in motion, perhaps.
That is the paradigm shift that we're moving through. I mean, whether we know it or not, it's happening simultaneously. One, the old world as we know it is collapsing, while the new world is being born. So I loved your song.
Thank you.
All right, well, keep your thoughts coming. And yeah, thank you, Emma, for all the links that you're putting in the chat. Artie just gave us a high five for that too, but we appreciate being able to do this. And I think that just want to make sure we guys have everyone's email addresses so that Emma can send you some of these links if you don't download them in real time. It's really more for us to have a digest of this, and then we can send it out to y'all if you're interested afterwards. So, all right, Roche, are we doing anything else, or am I going on?
We are going on. I think we have time for both of the inspiring pieces, right?
So I've got these two pieces that we're debating again. We're trying really hard to keep this to 75 minutes. And may I just say that time management is not my, God-given greatest strength. Because I think all moments in life are very, very precious and deserve as much packed into them as possible. So we are going to show those two videos, so they're going to go back to back. One is a really interesting project that came out of New York. It came out of Carnegie Hall, and I think it was actually in 2022 that this happened, but I think none of us are really appreciate it. But it was this conversation around Afrofuturism and what does it mean to tell the story from a different perspective. And it invited a group of curators to put together, I think it was 70 or 80 events around New York City over the course of 2 months to really reframe and really to talk about culture change in a very profound way through the arts. And so what you're going to hear actually right now is what the intention was of the curatorial committee and what spurred them and inspired them around this event that happened in New York around the introduction of Afrofuturism. And then it'll be followed by a futurist who we'll talk more about after she finishes her bit. But you'll hear Monica Bilsteeg, who is a global futurist. She has all these from South Africa, lives in London now. I mean, she's a global citizen, but she has a framing around the way of thinking about the news story and the way that we talk about it and what the components of it are. So we'll just put those two things back to back.
Ready, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Afrofuturism is the cultural movement that intersects music, visual art, literature, politics, science fiction, and of course, technology.
It is a way of seeing Black people thriving and surviving in the future context and being the masters of technology rather than being the tools.
It is the high culture of the African diaspora and how people of African descent operate with agency.
What if, in fact, we thought of the experience of African Americans as not just rigidly historical and connected to slave ships and pyramids, etc.? What if we also added the metaphor of space travel, the metaphors of technology and robotics? Not only would that revise how we remember race, but also it would give us a vision of the future in which Black people played a central and significant part. We have to admit that there is this kind of burden of historical consciousness that people of color, particularly Black people, carry, right? Whether it's the histories of trauma, the histories of white supremacy, the current realities of violence and white supremacy. And so Afrofuturism allows a revising of that historical burden, but in a way that's more accessible, creative, and innovative as younger people want to transform how we see Black people, how we see Black possibilities.
It's defining history for ourselves or recontextualizing what happened in the past. Your imagination is either in the service of your own interest or somebody else's. I'm a big fan of Stacey Robinson as a visual artist. He said you have to be able to show people the future before you explain it to them sometimes. And so through his art, he visually demonstrates what this possible future might look like.
The cultural shift is happening, and that is an amalgamation of Afrofuturist ideas coming to fruition.
Jordan Peele's Get Out, which opened up a whole lot of doors for people to have these conversations in art.
Black Panther really brought this vision and this ideology into the forefront. Lovecraft Country. If you want to know visually what Afrofuturism represents, watch that show.
Definitely Janelle Monáe. She kind of does a remix of what Sun Ra did.
It shifted the consciousness on how Blackness is viewed in society.
When I found out that Carnegie Hall was interested in doing a citywide festival on Afrofuturism, I was so excited. What was once on the outskirts of society as now so fascinating, so intriguing, and so powerful that it has reached the mainstream of society.
This is Carnegie Hall getting ahead of the game. Afrofuturism is still undefined, meaning it's still quite energetic and quite powerful.
Audiences should look forward to being transformed. They should look forward to feeling both a deeper sense of self and a sense of being connected to a larger universe.
It's going to be a constellation of ideas and concepts, not only from music, but art, education, philosophy, and literature.
It's not about legitimizing, it's about collaboration, this unification of cultures, man. You know, it's going to take Carnegie Hall into a whole different place. So this cultural exchange that's about to happen, it's really magical, man. It's a powerful time. It's a powerful time.
Mina, just so you know, can we do a little break between us before we go to Monica? I really, really love all of this work, and it's actually Kelly put a great point that we're heading into Black History Month. But Kimber, you've mentioned, and if you want to talk about that, this was going on at your son's school, because I am excited to hear what this next generation feels about this.
Yeah, it's very interesting because they have a class called Human Geography, and this is the topic that was discussed during that class. He's a sophomore, for those of you 16. And some of the things that they were talking about was varied between, yes, about how what does this look like? Is this a movement? Is this sort of a singularity right now? Does even the words of Afrofuturism, does that resonate? His girlfriend, who is also a really beautiful Black young woman, was also like struggling even with that language, Afrofuturism. And so they had this really, from what I understand, just really deep conversations about like, what is it in the first place? Secondarily, about this understanding of, yes, it's important to show the significance of Black people, Black bodies in these you know, if you think about anything in past history, they were talking about how you never saw that either, and talking about how, well, their response really was, well, because we were way more racist and it was all done by white people, so of course they're not going to show up in any of the futuristic stories, movies, books, etc. And so it's a really interesting generation because of the fact that their perspective of what is to be human right now and what it means to be racially human is such a, they understand that it's a construct, not in the way that maybe we grew up, right? Like it is a human-made construct, and they basically call bullshit on it. So it was just fascinating conversation that they were even like, this was one of the topics that are happening right now. Yeah. So I'm so excited. I'm excited to tell him about this. Like, oh, wow. We just talked about this just a few days ago. And I'm also being exposed to it as well. So.
Right. Yeah. And for me, again, when we start talking about the new story, the fact that we can create that story, right? We can write it and we can project it and it can become what we want it to. So this idea of transmuting trauma and so much injustice into this, projecting it into this world, and the role that art plays. You have a friend of mine who always says that arts will save us, right? And so this where the role of imagination in of all this, and then it sort of becomes more and more tangible and more real. And again, the Merchant Carnegie Hall, really, very state institution, decided that they wanted to bring this forward and put this much resource and effort. It wasn't just a one-off deal; it was a 2-month deal with 80 events, right? Because it was really penetrating the conversation, which I thought was so profound and so interesting. So, any other thoughts or feelings anybody want to jump in with? We're good. Which then does take us then to this next person. So Monica Bilsteig, interestingly, as a futurist who talks a lot about storytelling and how we can tell it from a different point of view. And again, I wish our youth can get more and more of this. Like at some point, can you imagine, maybe by December, we'll have a whole collection of people 14 to 22 with us in these conversations. But she was a consultant on Wakanda. In this whole storytelling, because I always talk about, again, we think about the future and what could it look like so the tech doesn't doom us and actually takes us into a realm that we are all very excited to be a part of. Wakanda becomes one of the examples, right? Star Trek and Wakanda, very, very few other stories that we can point to. And interesting, Monica was a consultant to it, and in a moment we will see why. So I'll just turn you off to her. Again, it was a full-on hour-long talk that we're going to just show you the sort of the culmination of a piece of it. But I think it's really important when we think about what kinds of stories we're telling and how we tell them. So, Mita?
I've been developing a project called Protopia Futures. And we landed on a few principles that are meant to be questioned, expanded, adjusted. This is differently than utopia or dystopia, not a finite vision. This is a process, and it's meant to be continuously questioned. Because as we try and do something better, we realize just how much more there is to do. And that is not something to discourage us, but actually to say, this is a welcome challenge. Okay, the first one, plurality. To understand that tolerance is not enough. We have to embrace the richness of conversation that could happen when we engage with people that have had very different lived experiences than us. Next point, interdependence. This is something that indigenous justice movements, but especially disability justice movements, have taught me, and I think can teach all of us. That the most aspirational goal is not independence. It's not to not need everybody, but to realize that at any given moment in our lives, we all needed somebody, and we all needed supportive systems. Disability, in fact, is one thing that you can be certain of unless you die of a sudden death. At one point or another, you will be disabled. And you will need those support systems. That our very humanity is dependent on each other. And it's not about all being the same, how we were forced to be in the Soviet Union. It's about recognizing how through this difference, we form a community, and how it is a community rather than magical individuals and super saviors should be the heroes of our future, as complex as those interactions can be because of the pain that we all carry within our bodies. Next point, embodiment. We should not accept technology that makes us more separated from our very bodies, from each other, and also from this planet. We should demand the kind of technology that helps us to connect with our very bodies, with each other, and with the rest of the living world. And sometimes that technology, like in the example of echolocation, doesn't require technology, just requires to listen to the people. So much damage has been done, we know sustainability is not enough. The only way to be sustainable, let alone to regenerate, is to start looking at life as technology itself. Within the living world, there's no such thing as resources. There's no such thing as environment. Humans are not in the center of it all. We are not on this earth. We're not on this land. We are off it. And so we have to learn from the systems of life and start working towards the kind of technologies and the kind of innovation and the kind of design and the kind of architecture that embodies that. When we design our future cities, we should not be designing them just for ourselves, but for all of the other life that inhabits it. People keep complaining that the future has not come because the flying cars are not yet here. But do we actually want that? Maybe a much more futuristic thing is to open our skies not for flying cars transporting the super rich, but for birds through the projects of rewilding. But that doesn't mean that we don't need flying cars and drones. We should develop that technology because that could help us in the case of disaster relief, of emergency health issues, etc., catering to the actual needs of the many, not the wanton desires of the few. Creative flourishment, because creativity is where resistant movements flourish. Even when the change in the physical world seems very difficult, that's where these ideas are pioneered. We all need to start seeing creativity as something that lives beyond just art galleries and museums, but actually can permeate so many other activities of our life, and especially the living fabric of our cities. Spiritual fulfillment. We need to make spaces for that in our cities. For rituals, for spaces to gather, for spaces to belong. Future cities, smart cities. Let's retire that term. Why cities is better. It's not just about productivity, it's also about creativity, play, and belonging. And all that is summed up with evolved values, right? All of that fundamentally means that we need to rethink what kind of values we need in that world that is degrowth or post-growth or whatever we label it. I don't actually believe that we need to degrowth. In the material world and the material consumption, maybe yes. But why should we cap the growth of knowledge, the growth of experience, the growth of our connection? Not just to each other, but again, to all of life. So what we can do is instead design the kind of systems that give us everything that we hope for, everything we need, but not what we expect. Challenge our imagination with the kind of future stories and future images that we create. Human and other than human species interconnection. We do not exist as apart from this world. And we can only be well if this world is well. We've been going from Anthropocene to Eremocene. That age of existential loneliness that happens when we extinguish all other life that doesn't conform to understanding of civilization. Can we change that? Can instead of succumbing to Eremocene, we change it to Symbiocene? We're in this together. We're in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. Some of us have yachts, some of us barely have life jackets. Some of us are actively drowning. Future is shaped not just by actions, but also by our apathy. When we decide something is not our problem, that we can definitely not do anything about it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to defy escapism. Instead of moving fast and breaking things and not thinking about all the collateral damage it causes, can we move slow and actually regenerate? Not things, but life. In order to do that, we need to move from human-centric to life-centric design. The way we actually ensure the long-term future for humanity is to decenter us and to see how we are part of all of it. The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just easily make differently. Bell Hooks says, to be truly visionary, we have to root our imagination in our concrete reality, while simultaneously imagining possibilities beyond that reality. Can we try to do that together?
It's funny. I always want her to go on and on and on. I'm like, oh, right, she stopped. Excuse me. Again, Monica is an amazing person. We hope to have her on the FemFuture Society and spend more time getting to know more about her and her work and her really, really diverse background and her way of thinking. But I love the idea of protopian futures. Protopian is a term that came from Kevin Kelly, the editor and I think founder of Wired magazine, to really find that space between this utopian story, which actually wipes out a lot of diversity, and obviously dystopian, which is a lot of what our storytelling is focused on right now. So I love introducing audiences to this concept of protopian storytelling, and that every action we take and every way we talk about it is designed to actually hold us all collectively in it. So next time you get a chance to tell a young person about where things are going, give them this as a theme to work toward, and look for those stories. We're trying to find more and more of those stories. So with that, I'd love to hear any thoughts and reactions you guys have to these things that we've been trying to share. We really sort of have pulled from all over as we have thought about it, but as I sort of summed it up and I was thinking about it, right? From starting from I inherit you and you inherit me, to really your imagination is in service of you or it's in service of somebody else. You know, Mark Twain gave a great thing that said you can't trust your judgment if your imagination's out of focus. So part of what we want to do with this series is just like open up our imagination, see the things that other people are doing or talking about or creating or feeling as a way to be able to expand our own reality and understanding of it. I'm very privileged to spend a lot of time with these people who are doing this kind of work, who are thinking in this kind of way. And so we're going to package it up and share it with you guys. So is it helpful? Is it inspiring?
I'm actually curious if everyone would be willing to type in like what's one takeaway, like one thing from everything that we heard and surfaced in this time that resonates a little bit more. And it could even be a mood or feel.
If anybody wants to say it too, I feel like, again, our group is small enough that if anyone wants to jump in and
I'd like to start. I posted this, but what she said in the last talk, move slow and regenerate, I think it's just so beautiful, because part of the time we think doing the work means we need to do it fast and we need to go hard and hustle. And I think that's a part of where we're broken as a culture, is thinking that everything needs to be built fast, it needs to go fast, and we need to get there fast. And it's like the tortoise and the hare, right? Move a little bit slower and you'll still get there, and you'll be able to regenerate when you're there, and you'll be able to receive all of the beauty in that moment because you've been along for the process. So that just really resonated with me wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
I think for me is that, without making it sound like a terrible tagline, but it's that whole like future is now. They're talking about the future, but they're really talking about what is happening right now. So that way it can become a more consistent now. I think is what I'm gathering. And I love that idea, is that it doesn't have to be in the future. It is what we do now. And every step that we take right now is then creating the normacy into the future. And so I think that's what's really I'm taking away from it.
100%. And it's actually, and interestingly, I gave myself a promotion recently from strategic futurist to exponential strategist, because I feel like the future is really here, and every step we take and every story we tell actually is framing and making possible what it is that generations from now people are going to live. Like, we're framing a whole new way in which we think about the role that technology plays, and the role that the economy plays, and the role that culture and identity play. So we're gifted this incredible moment, and Leora can talk more about this incredible moment that we're in, right, and how we are called to do this. But that comes with both responsibility and hopefully some awareness about how important this moment is. And so I do think it is now. You're absolutely right, Kimber. And it's a cool now. Like, I've been in the world of transitioning and trying to heal broken systems for 30-something years, and there's never been a better time than now, right, to go into any one of those systems now, whether it's education, healthcare, food, agriculture, finance, whatever.
Education, media, and et cetera.
I mean, we can
et
go
cetera.
on and on and on, right? All of those get a chance to be completely flipped, even the internet itself. And so I get excited about that as the moment and the invitation that we're a part of.
I was struck. I mean, I completely agree with Monica's when she said, embrace the richness of conversations with people that walk in completely different shoes, or come from basically have different lived experiences. And I completely agree with that. And I'm always wondering, where can I go do that? Because where can I be in a place where, except maybe an airport, and I have had fascinating conversations with people at airports. But if anyone has ideas of where, I could put myself in the middle of exposure to people that might not be the same. It's fascinating, because we tend to, get invited to or attend things that we are familiar with, the people or the topic. And that doesn't necessarily open the aperture as wide.
No, and actually, I was really privileged last year to spend a lot of time traveling, and one of my favorite trips was to Nairobi. And I specifically went to Nairobi because I wanted to understand what was happening in at least a piece of Africa, right? I was trying to put the puzzle of that, which is this huge continent, together. We've talked about how important it is. We talked about the median age being 19 across the continent. And so what's happening there, and to be surrounded by this youthful energy that is really trying to figure out how to do things differently. I don't know that they're necessarily doing it slowly, Tania. I think they really are trying to rush in and do it, but there was just this vitality, and there was just this no barriers, not I think, again, US youth is very, very despondent right now. And I felt like African youth was very excited about what was possible. So I think, again, that contrast, right? You're putting yourself into a space that just is designed differently and has different resources and different place on the demographic spectrum was really, really useful and helpful for me and got me excited. So I know travel's a big luxury, and I, think about my carbon budget pretty thoughtfully. But I try and get there. And then I try and surround myself with people like you, right? Who are introducing us to new ways of thinking and writing and music and ways to experience it. Any other thoughts that this inspires me else?
I'll share that whether it was straightforward or kind of reading between the lines, I did feel like there was this, what's connected all of these themes is oneness, and oneness, I'm saying our return to oneness, even though we never actually left oneness, but we just kind of forgot that we weren't one anymore. But also that, sorry, I got distracted. Concussion. So yeah, so there's that, and okay, give me a second, I'll be back. I just have to.
I just wonder how sharp she was before the concussion.
That's exactly what Roshi was saying before. I think if we get to, hopefully we'll get to see you many more times, darling, and we'll get to see your genius. But I think, again, then takeaways again about untangling possible futures from economic systems. That's really where my work is most focused right now, is thinking about how the intersection of, not the intersection, but how important the economic systems are. And I think we're up for a giant transition when we have a big job dislocation situation happening in the next few years. And so there's a way of really rethinking productivity would be high. How do you distribute that more effectively, right? And how does that get really rethought for the kind of regenerative, equitable systems that we want to have? So I think it's cool that we're all going to become economists in some way, shape, or form as we imagine moving forward, right? We're all worried about being technologists. I think we're going to become more and more thoughtful economists as well, hopefully life-centric ones. All right, with that, we will close it out with this extraordinary, I guess, piece of a poem. I don't know if it's the whole piece. I think we're reading an excerpt, right, Emma? And her beautiful voice, you're going to do it. Sun, in January, had introduced us to the work of an amazing person whose name I'm sure I'm going to butcher. I'm going to have Emma do it. Emma, tell us who this is that you're going to be reading of. And then we'll just close out with that. We'll have a moment of just sort of like deep breath and exhale. I will say my goodbyes to you sort of now, but then we'll have a piece of music from Tania, and we will get very excited about seeing you guys again in March. And that focus will be more, you know, it's International Women's Month. There's a part of me that's like, fuck that, because it should be more than just 1 month, right? This should be the whole conversation we're continuing to have. But there will be some focus on some people who are doing some really cutting edge and really big thinking around not just giving us like, thank you, the spotlight for 30 days or 31, but that are actually really in there shifting the systems. But before we close out, Emma, you want to take us into the close?
I would love to. This is Bayo Akomolafe.
And we're watching something while we were speaking. You want to tell us what we're watching?
You're just watching
We got Rafik Anadol's work on the screen.
Oh, we do?
Yep.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm in the script, so I can't see what's
okay.
on.
So while Emma's reading, you're going to be watching the work of Rafik Anadol, who's an again extraordinary digital artist who creates these giant installations. You can see the scale here, where he takes digital data and then turns it into dynamic art.
Beautiful. So let yourself be mesmerized by that while I'm reading this. Welcome, traveler. I'm quite confident that even as the oceans boil and the hurricanes beat violently against our once safe shores, and the air sweats with the heat of impending doom, and our fists protest the denial of climate justice, that there is a path to take that has nothing to do with victory or defeat, a place we do not yet know the coordinates to, a question we do not yet know how to ask. The point of the departed arrow is not merely to pierce the bullseye and carry the trophy. The point of the arrow is to sing the wind and to remake the world in the brevity of flight. There are things we must do, sayings we must say, thoughts we must think that look nothing like the images of success that have so thoroughly possessed our visions of justice. May this new decade be remembered as the decade of the strange path, of the third way, of the broken binary, of the traversal disruption, the chaotic moment, the post-human movement for emancipation, the gift of disorientation that opened up new places of power and of slow limbs. May this decade bring more than just solutions, more than just a future. May it bring words we don't know yet and temporalities we have not yet inhabited. May we be slower than speed could calculate and swifter than the pull of gravity of words can incarcerate. And may we be visited so thoroughly and met in wild places so overwhelmingly that we are left undone, ready for composting, ready for the impossible.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Tania, for being with us live and joining us for the whole thing. I'm going to get like all weepy as I like feel that and feel really, really grateful to be in community with all of you. So I hope we get to see you again in March. And with that, we'll close with a very lively song from Tania. I will say that on New Year's Day, we all got up and danced as we were listening to this. I'm not quite sure if we're feeling it quite at the same time, but if you're feeling moved.
Can we get is there a way to get a copy of that, what we just heard, and also of the visual artist?
I think that
we can give you both. Yeah. I actually put a link already in the chat to Bayo, but
it was on top of it.
It takes you to his
website.
There
it is. I see it.
Yeah. He's stunning. It's so spectacular.
Yeah, that's worth reading every day when you wake up in the morning. You know? Maybe that will be my intention. Now, for 30 days, I'll read him. All right. Well, any other closing thoughts? You guys good? Everyone feels well settled and ready for this next month. We need you all in the game. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Roshi, for coming to play with us. And
Pleasure.
Go, Roshi.
More to come. All right, baby, let's go dance to you.
All right, this is Our Rebellious Hearts, y'all. This is the single I'm working on with a friend of mine, Rita Brent, who's also a famous comedian and awesome musician too. And I'm really excited about this. This is the first mini documentary I've produced along with the song, and it's being shown in its first film festival at the end of the month. So I'm really proud of this song, and I hope y'all enjoy it and shake a groove thing to it on the way out.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think we need the quotes, Mita. I think we'll just listen to.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, 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 we are revolution. Let the classroom start today. Get your notebooks open, pencil sharp, and we're gonna study love and pain. From the building tops to the wild women lead the way. With the script to tear down every little skyline and reinventing your own way. Use it. Use it. Hey, 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 we are revolution. Let the choir start singing today. Get in harmony with the melody to transition before the break. From the mountain tops to the wild women lead the way. Let the tempo slow down. Let's all go now, reinventing our way. Use it. Singing the story of our. Use it. Singing the story of.
Hey, 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 from Maya A to Beyonce, from Meg Thee Stallion to Melinda Gates, we run the game, it didn't come to play. Send a bad signal, we save the day. I'm nurturing, but don't push me. My body, my autonomy. Try to hush us, we gon' step up. Plan A, ain't no backup. Empowerment is our element, protesting in the elements. You bring the heat, we walk through the fire, calm in the storm, no arc required. The wilder, the better. The woman, respect her. No evolution without revolution. Love transfusion, that's a resolution.
Biggest hugs ever. Mwah. Thank you all. Have a beautiful evening, and we'll see you again in 30 days. Or like 29 days. I guess we had extra days. So see you 29 and a half days.
Yeah.
Mwah. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.